Welcome gallery, councillors and staff to our June ordinary meeting. It's great to see such a good roll-up in the gallery tonight. I'll open the meeting with the acknowledgement of country. Richmond Valley Council recognises the people of the Bundjalung Nations as custodians and traditional owners of this land, and we value and appreciate the continuing culture connection to lands, their living culture and the unique role in the life of this region in the past, present and future. Mr General Manager, could you read the prayer, please?
Dear Lord, we meet to serve our Richmond Valley community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognise our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen. That brings us to item 3, which is public access and question time. I think we have 5 requests tonight. The first one being President of the CAAI, Mr Andrew Somerville, in relation to item 15.1 Draft Operational Plan 2022-23, Draft Revenue Policy and Draft Long-Term Financial Plan 2022-2023. Mr Somerville, would you like to come forward, please? Welcome. You'll have a 5-minute to speak. At the 4th minute, you'll get a bell, giving you a minute's notice to wind up. But just make yourself at home and feel relaxed. And when you're ready to start, please do.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is a position I do feel relaxed in, but we'll give it a go. Yeah, my name's Andrew Somerville. I'm currently the President of the Agents Association. First of all, I'd like to thank the Council for the opportunity to speak on the proposed charges tonight. Second of all, I'd actually like to congratulate all the vendors, buyers, Council staff and agents on a very successful 2021-2022. There's been something like 120,000 head run through that facility this year, so I think that's a credit to everyone involved. So yeah, I'd like to pass on congratulations there to all users of the facility for doing a great job. I'd also like to say that NRLX is a very important piece of the community and serves many other purposes than selling livestock. As an association, we support Council's ownership of the facility. A brief overview of an agents commission. All CAAI agents, there's a representative from each agency here tonight. So we trade what they call del credere. So this means vendors are paid within the trading terms of the agent, regardless of whether the agent has been paid or not. If there's any questions around that, happy to answer them. In my 15 years of direct involvement in the industry, commission rates have not changed. They've been set at a level that has lasted the test of time through good years and bad. The introduction of an agent usage fee of 0.3% will ultimately result in another vendor charge or higher selling costs. In addition to this charge, there are other new charges that CAAI have not been consulted on. For example, livestock delivery, including delivery management, at $4.50 per head. Based on this year's throughput, that is a new fee of over $500,000. I spoke to Ben Zeller this afternoon. He advised me that Council has no plans to enforce this fee, and it's just something that's up for future discussion. I ask that all fees that have had no consultation be removed from this policy. I would like to add that Council did invite us to an information session approximately 3 weeks ago, which we did intend on coming to, and unfortunately it landed on a Tuesday when we had quite a large yard in of cattle, so we do apologise that we couldn't make that meeting. With regards to the 0.3% agent business usage fee, the CAAI also asks that it be removed, as any such fee will ultimately result in increased costs to the vendor. Our vendors were very supportive of the longer contracts we negotiated with Council through to 2023, and I believe any introduction of fees would be detrimental to the reputation of NRLX and the Richmond Valley Council inside this period. I believe by leaving fees at a fair and sustainable level will actually result in the most profitable outcome for NRLX with increased throughput. I've watched other facilities with similar fee structures as these proposed lose significant market share to direct consignment and Auctions Plus. And just to note, Auctions Plus fee is $6.30 to $7.80 per head, depending on lot size. Considering this, I would like councillors to use discretion when making their decision. Our vendors do not need any more charges. I'd also like to invite any councillors who would like to contact me regarding the facility, that the line's open for contact. Thank you.
Thank you. You willing to take questions?
Yeah.
Has any councillor got any questions? Councillor Hayes.
Andrew, you mentioned vendor fees and that you pay the vendor irrespective of you collect the fees or not. I'm just wondering, how do you determine your fees? Are they percentage based or are they per head?
No, correct. Our fees are percentage based.
Thank you. Yep.
Any other questions? Councillor Humphries.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you for coming along, Andrew. We were actually very much looking forward to you at the information session, so we're glad that you're here as well. My question is, could you please explain why you would pass on the full 0.3 directly to the vendors, or would there be any, would you pass on a percentage of that 0.3? Why does that go directly to the vendors?
Well, thank you for your question. As a group, we feel as though where the agent's business charge is currently at is a sustainable level. Anywhere upon that is unsustainable. This year, as I acknowledge, has been a fantastic year. There's no doubt about it, but not every year is this year either.
Around sustainability for the agents.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is President of the All Breeds, Mr Bruce Lyle, in relation to the same item that was just previously spoken on. Welcome, Mr Lyle, and I see you were in the gallery, so the same rules apply. A minute before the 5 minutes is up.
Thank you,
Welcome when you're ready.
Musto, and thanks to the council to have the opportunity to speak. I'm the President, Bruce Lyle, of the All Breeds sale, and this 0.3% came across my table as a pass-on, a drop-down expense for vendors. The sale committee, we run the sale as a not-for-profit entity, and for many years now, because of this, any excess funds we've been able to tip into the community into three charity organisations, largely being, last year was Windara, the Rescue Helicopter, and also the Casino VRA, which we're very proud with our relationship that we've had with the NRLX and having the council support our sale that one day of the year, holding back on some fees being held back on the committee. And instead of putting the money aside or reducing fees or giving some payback to vendors, we've decided to tip all our profits into the community, back into the community. Excuse me. Now, if we were to pay that $3,000 to $4,000 that we donate back into council fees, then that would be the end of those donations, I'm afraid. And I think our relationship needs to go a little bit deeper. Excuse me. Our relationship has been twofold in that the All Breeds Committee get the NRLX working in conjunction with us to have the facility pristine on our sale day. This acts twofold in that it gives us somewhere to sell cattle that we're very proud to offer them, the elite cattle in an elite facility, and it also showcases what council can do and is doing to the wider community. We also hand over the donations on sale day, and we have representatives from those three organisations turn up, and we're all happy to have photos taken and hit the media and give NRLX and the Richmond Valley Council plenty of airtime in that we are a community active, regional, rural-based entity. And I think it cuts both ways. We can stop the donations and give council $3,000, and I think what's the best spend of that $3,000? I think council get a lot more than $3,000 in society advocacy in showing what we actually do on the day. It's cheap advertising. It's a clean-up for the sale yards, it's pristine, there's promotional tables for Richmond Valley Council at the entrance for people to come in and see what the whole region's about, not just the day of the sale. We get people come in, it's the biggest draw card at the sale yards throughout the year, each and every year. So I think the point 3, when I heard it was going to drop down to vendors, I spoke to many vendors on this, and it's a very unpopular area in the meeting, in that we've had to fork out money in capital levy dues. We've also had an increase in the yard dues for bulls. We've also been asked to take on Stock Live, which was against the sale committee's agreement at a meeting, but we ran with it. This year we've been able to increase fees to cover those expenses, and to find another 0.3% is going to be whacked on top. It's just not, we've increased our fees 2 years in a row so that we can, council have requested we use Stock Live. We have funded that through raises already. We don't feel that the 0.3% is fair and just at this point in time on this one-day event that council gets an enormous amount of positive feedback, and it's your show and tell as well as ours. So I think to drop that on the committee via the agents to recoup some funds if there's a deficit on the day is grossly unfair. Thank you.
You take questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Councillor
Don't call me Mr.
Hayes.
Bruce, the profits you make out of these sales, if the 0.3% the charges wasn't passed on to you people, the community would still receive a maximum amount of donation.
Correct.
After each sale.
Correct. We have no need to change our donation status. More than happy to do it, but if we've got to dig into fund the running of the sale on the day, then yes, we can't do both.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, who's actually on the committee?
The committee is myself as president. We have Janita Trustham as secretary, and we have Chris Whitney as our public officer.
Okay, so there's 3 on the committee.
3 of the committee.
Thank you. And what's the fee structures there? I might surely ask the general manager this later for council.
The fee structure is to enter the bull sale. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have an entry fee per lot, whether they be male or female, and we also sell advertising space in the catalogue, which is per page, and that's our only income.
Right.
So if our numbers are down, our income is down. There's a certain amount of people take up the offer to advertise in the catalogue, which we recommend everybody does. The more profit, the more we've got to give away.
Right. Do their vendors pay agent fees when they sell?
Vendors pay agent fees. Only the commission that each agent charges.
Yeah, so
Yes.
they charge their 5%
Correct.
or whatever it be.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I?
Oh, sorry,
question
one
before
more.
you go? The sale on Friday, very successful, I gather. It's Friday just gone. How much success of that sale and how much has the new facility, committed to the price of those cattle?
Look, I wasn't at the sale on Friday, but I did hear it was a successful event. I heard it was well run by both council and vendors and agents. Again, I think the safety of people, the safety of the animals, and the positioning of the sale yards makes it an A1 choice for that type of event. And I think council, there's no problem from vendors with the quality of the facilities.
Other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
No, thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr John McFadden of Bungawalba in relation to item 14.1, flood recovery update. Come forward, please, Mr McFadden. It's a bit hard to say that I've been calling you Jack for 45 years.
John Pazier.
Welcome.
That's on the road notice. That's on the road notice, John. You know me as Jack, and I'll stay Jack. But
welcome, and when you're ready, the same, you'll get
okay.
the minute's notice when you're 4-minute mark.
yeah, this won't take long, but first of all, thank you, on behalf of the lower river towns for all the potholes and all the activity and the speed that a lot of our roads were patched up, and yeah, like, because potholes are, you know, when you buckle a rim in a little profile vehicle, you know how serious the potholes are, but it'll all come together. You're doing a mighty job. But I'm here tonight to talk about a thorn that's been in our side all your life, because you've gone to Evans Head, and I now live in Evans Head, and it's been in our thorn in our side all our life. So I'll just read this. For as long as I can remember, there has been a dip in the Corrakai Woodburn Road, 1 kilometre on the Woodburn side of the Bungawalbin Bridge, and it's exactly 1 kilometre from the middle of the bridge on the Woodburn side. This spot is the first part of the road to be cut by floodwaters, and certainly the last spot where floodwaters recede. Sometimes and always in a major flood, several days before and after the remaining parts of the road. It's cut 2 days before. It's cut 2 days before the rest of the road gets cut, and sometimes it's 3 days before it comes out, and the other rest of the road's out, and I mean from Casino to Evans Head's all out, and it's not. And this is quite devastating for people in the towns and on the properties there, when they're making their mind up. Have we got to move this flood? Have we got to go to higher ground? Have we got to go to family and relatives, you know? And that road's already cut us off 2 days before they got to make that choice, you know, before you can gauge what a flood is, because in that, most of the floods in that area takes 2 days to get to us. You know, you gauge what Casino, Kyogle's got, Rapville, Bungawalbin and Lismore, of course, and you know you can handle a lot of floods. I'll read on. My request is that the council put several pipes on the existing road base. I was heard that pipes have sunk before. Well, let's just sit them on the road base that's there and start. And a road over these pipes to keep this essential, I haven't spelled it right here, but I'll say it again, essential road open for much longer than has been the case. Council must realise our lower river towns need this escape route open for as long as possible in flood times, whether to evacuate to family and friends in higher sites or to tend to livestock or farm equipment before and after floods. I'm not just blaming this spot in the last flood, but for my paddock out the Corrakai Ellengowan Road, I sat and watched the flood on TV and pinching myself that I was so lucky to do that, because I'd got me cattle on the hill early and they weren't getting washed away, and I could sit home on TV, but then I knew it's getting close when I can get through. And the first day I went through, I got to Tintinbar, through Wallingbar, Lismore, Bentley, Casino, Ellengowan, and a trip of 150 k's that normally I drive 40 k's. I'm not just blaming this spot for that day, but then it stayed under and it stayed under, so I was making much longer trips. But I'm not just talking for me, I'm talking for the lower river towns. I believe pipes will not affect the water flow but keep our Richmond Valley economy flowing instead of coming to a standstill for several days extra than need be. I could go on and go on, but if we're good at putting the pipes in, well, maybe we'll get the job of putting pipes under the Woodburn and Broadwater bypass to let a bit of that water go, but that's Forget I said that. I'll just say here now, please let's do this in our lifetime. Because it's been there, a thorn in our side all my life. Yes, okay.
Would you take any questions?
Yeah, if you want to ask.
I'd just like
Councillor
to
Hayes.
make a comment that'll probably lead to a question. John, I've brought this to council's attention not that long ago, actually, when they were talking about doing work on that road to make sure that if we can, and, you know, finances really govern what you can do on that road, but to get culverts in place there, so exactly what you said can happen.
Yes?
I don't know what the outcome of that will be, but it'd be wonderful. Your experience and the two floods that we've just had, one after another, how many days was it that you couldn't pass through there on that road?
Cost business people probably 8 days.
8 days?
8 days, you know. And then there's the stress of the bus drivers and the police officers and everyone that's involved, you know. And they're forced onto Oakland Road. Now, there was no Oakland Road for quite a few days this flood, you know. Oakland Road's usually a escape route, but it's a dangerous little one-lane levee bank built beside the river, and it hadn't had 20 cents spent on it from the Lismore Council since before the 2017 flood, you know. They just don't spend any money on it, but when you look at Lismore City Council and what they've got to deal with, you probably know why, you know, but it's the outskirts of their thing, and maybe we should shift our boundaries over there and take Oakland Road on, you know. There's only the river between us,
John, the relationship between Oakland Road and the area at Reardon's Lane that goes under, which one do you get past first? Which one can you pass?
This is the one that blocks us first.
Yep.
And if we're worried about the one at Reardon's Lane, well, let's do it too. In our lifetime. We should have some money coming in from higher up, and it'd be a good gesture for the lower river towns to take this stress of at least this dip off them, you know. It's been there for way too long, you know.
All right, any other questions? Is that you, Mr McFadden? And in the debate later, you will get a response and a comment on your presentation. Okay?
There,
About where we're going with it.
Thanks again for filling up them potholes.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Richard Gates, Executive Member of Evans Head Residents for Sustainable Development Incorporated, in relation to the same item 14.1, Flood Recovery Update. Welcome, Dr. Gates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors and staff.
And you're fully aware of the rules?
I think so.
Thank you.
Councillors, I would like you to reflect for a moment on some of the final words of the executive summary of the submission to the 2022 New South Wales Flood Inquiry that, quote, "We can no longer simply expect communities to pick up the pieces after an ever-increasing number of natural disasters. Our climate is changing, and the way we prepare for, respond to, and recover from future disasters of this scale must also change." These are probably the most important words of the submission from Council. The ninth of the summary of recommendations is land use planning. In that brief summary, improvement of the consistency of flood modelling and risk management is raised. This is not a new matter, but has been raised previously in the early part of this century before the Pacific Highway was upgraded. You can refer to the two parliamentary inquiries and dissenting reports not long after we went to the year 2000. In 2014, draft flood planning for the Evans River was put out for comment. It was eventually published, but without any of the corrected catchment material made available to Rouse Council at the time, with the promise from them that the consultant would get back to me with information and for that information. They didn't. The catchment failed to include a vast area to the north of the Woodburn-Evanshead Road, including the Evanshead Memorial Aerodrome and Broadwater National Park, all which drain into the catchment of the Evans River, partially through a floodplain which runs beside and across the eastern section of the proposed Iron Gates estate, which is currently before the Northern Regional Planning Panel and Council for decision for residential development, a process which has taken nearly 8 years and which should have been refused on flood and fire grounds a long time ago. Properties at Doonbar were also flooded by the very same floodplain and not the river. The quality of the material provided by consultants for use by government is, in my view, problematic. There are no independent checks of the veracity and quality of the information provided. Academics are subject to independent assessment of their works, but it would seem that consultants' reports are not subject to the same scrutiny, notwithstanding how important, no critical, their information is for human safety. That the information about a large catchment of the Evans River and related floodplains leading to it was ignored in flood planning is, in my view, unforgivable and part of a larger pattern of sometimes poor quality, unverified material making its way to council and other agencies for decision making, costing ratepayers hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. There are a number of examples of this quality problem in Richmond Valley Council's history, including the paid consultants report and a plan to irrigate the Evanshead Memorial Aerodrome with effluent from the Evanshead Sewage Treatment Plant, where the consultant got the directions of water flows totally wrong in the opposite direction and failed to actually measure the depths of the existing flood drainage system so that the proposed plan, if implemented, would have destroyed it completely. Did anyone seek to verify the proposed plan or do any field studies to ascertain whether it was correct or not? No, the plan was never checked in the field. The report was a desktop study and shown to be just plain wrong in subsequent independent assessment, but only when attention was drawn by the community. That same consultant provided yet another report to Council, which was also problematic. It's not my intention to elaborate on the details of these matters other than to draw your attention to what should be a critical recommendation, and that is that all consultants' plans prepared for flood advice for Council should be subject to independent scrutiny to stop not only costly financial mistakes for which ratepayers often foot the bill directly or indirectly, but to stop people being put at risk, in some cases with their lives. Responsibility should fall to all three levels of government, with consultants also being held responsible for many of the problems we have seen recently. I do not agree with the statement on page 6 of the report in which Council, quote, acknowledges that nothing could have prevented this event. 2 examples. First, Council knew that it was building its basketball facility in a low-lying area which was subject to flooding. While the deluge could not be stopped, the impact on the building could have been prevented by not building it there in the first place. Second, Ballina, slated for major development by the state government. Why would such development be considered when all the flooding which occurred early this year and with sea level predicted to rise almost a metre, flooding much of Ballina by the turn of this century? Why would you even think of it? It cannot be said that we cannot predict future outcomes when it is blindingly obvious we can. We do not build things in floodplains without consequences. Perhaps the most important controllable factor is the increasing population of the North Coast, being pushed heavily by the state government without any appropriate consideration of the planning matters it generates. Council and the state government have known since 2001 that the Northern Rivers has already passed its carrying capacity, yet there is a continued pressure for more people for reasons which receive little critical attention. Council already admits the community has reached the limits of its resilience. There are limits to growth, and you councillors have a responsibility under Section 8 of the Local Government Act to consider future generations in your planning. I see no evidence of that in the material before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you take questions?
Certainly.
Councillors got any questions? No? Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms Deborah Johnson of Bunga in relation to item 14.1, Floods 2022 Recovery Update, 16.1 Pacific Highway Local Road Handover, and 19.5 Grant Application Information Report, May 2022. Ms Johnson, when you've been here before, you know the rules, so when you're ready to start, please do. Sorry. Oh, we have a presentation also.
Thank you. Okay, firstly, thank you for forming a Rural Advisory Board for the flood recovery. At the first meeting, the main concern raised was the lack of warning in relation to what water was heading our way and, moving forward, what we can do to reduce the risk. On numerous occasions over the years, the community have requested from Richmond Valley Council, Rouse County Council, Manly Hydraulics and BOM for additional river height and flood gauges to be installed in the area's extensive waterways as recommended by previous flood studies. Manly Hydraulics Laboratory have advised the onus is on the council. When the Pacific Highway from Ballina to Woodburn was upgraded, the new road was built on a raised earthen mound against extensive professional advice. This mound has effectively created a dam, stretching across the floodplain that usually allows floodwater to escape the Richmond catchment into the ocean. The new highway was originally supposed to be built on pylons to allow clear space underneath, thus avoiding disruption of the floodplains. Due to the marshy ground, they had to drill foundations too deep and cost was prohibitive. They changed the design to use a cheaper raised mound construction instead, effectively creating a dam wall. As a compromise, it was supposed to have 200-metre long culverts to still allow sufficient drainage. To cut costs, this was downgraded again to just 66 metres. The highway upgrade included 49 kilometres of road located within one of Australia's largest and complex floodplains. Before the highway upgrade, water would flow out gently across that stretch into the ocean. Now it can only exit via the river at Broadwater Bridge and a small canal at Tuckambull. Has the council taken steps to mitigate this? If not, this is a matter of urgency. The Bungawalbin levee has survived damage-free for around 70 years. It was initially damaged in 2017, likely because of increased water volume and pressure caused by the Pacific Highway upgrade, or dam. Rouse County Council was advised of the needed measures to fix it and proceeded to disregard the advice. When fixing the levee, not enough money was spent to fix it properly and proper design was ignored. Thus, it has been damaged and needed emergency repairs again multiple times since, resulting in massively increased costs. The levee banks exist to protect the community from minor to moderate floods, and in the case of major floods, they allow residents extra time to evacuate and prepare before roads are submerged. Neglecting the maintenance and investment in this flood mitigation asset puts hundreds of properties and lives directly in danger. It has already taken 5 years for it to be repaired sufficiently. I was advised it would be another 3. 8 years is unacceptable. What is Richmond Valley Council's role in the flood mitigation assets, and is funding being sought for the restoration? It was a slap in the face to the Northern Rivers when the Australian Army held humanitarian response training with Indonesia and the US in Darwin during May. The aim of the program was to give the soldiers some real training value. They should have been in the Northern Rivers, on-the-job training, helping thousands of people. The Department of Defence has the capability and logistics to significantly help. They have carpenters, electricians and builders, everything we need. They are trained to set up towns. They can get people back in their homes quickly and without fuss. This is a real, practical, timely solution. I again ask Council to please request Department of Defence send the engineering corps out house by house. It is with concern I note a grant was not approved for an ecologist, especially considering the importance of the environment's flood recovery. With the second highest biodiversity level in Australia, Bungawalbin's wetlands and river systems are essential to Australia's ecosystem. I have written to Council, local land services, state ministers and federal ministers asking them to restore the wetlands as a matter of priority. There is no reason it cannot happen concurrently with the township restorations, as it requires different skill sets and trades. A portion of the $2 million awarded to Council for the flood recovery should be used to restore the wetlands as a matter of priority. I understand Council is waiting on the BMT flood study to be amended following the floods this year. The study was to be comprehensive, specifically including the Bungarwalbin catchment. When a surveyor came out to record flood levels, we offered to take him to other markings further down the road. He refused, saying it won't make much difference. We explained that the flood water flows. It is not level. We were also told the readings were only accurate to 200 millimetres. 200 millimetres can mean the difference between flooding or not. If data is still not being collected correctly, this study will be void. Thank you.
Thank you. You had another 2 items. Did you want to speak on those two?
I covered them roughly in those. That's it. I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions?
Might just ask
Councillor Hayes.
Deborah where the information on the highway come from. Was it forthcoming, or did you have to do a lot of research to find out about the...
A little bit of time on Google, looking at the documents submitted to the RTA documents, or RMS, whatever they were called at that time. It's all there. It's really easy to find. If you just want to spend half an hour, just look it up.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And once again, I thank all the presenters tonight and wish you a safe trip home after the meeting. Next item is 4 apologies. We have a full roll-up tonight. Number 5 is the mayoral minutes, says nil. Confirmation on the minutes. Could I get a mover, please?
Move.
Councillor Morrissey, seconder. Councillor Cornish. Put that, the accuracy of minutes. Is everyone okay with the accuracy? Put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried, unanimous. Item 7, matters arising out of the minutes. Has any councillor got any matters arising? We'll move on. Declarations of interest. Has any councillor got any declarations? Mr General Manager, have you received any?
No, nil received.
Petitions, there's nil. We have 1 notice of motion on page 8 from Councillor Hayes. I'll hand over to you.
I'd just like to move that notice of motion as written, if I can get a seconder.
Can I have a seconder,
Second.
please?
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, look, I think this is in a very important matter as the Richmond Valley Council towns and villages commence the rebuilding process since the floods. I've included the 2019 bushfires, a comment on them in there because I think I've already been asked. I think we're going to be asked further we'll need a comparison of what was done in the bushfires compared to what possibly could be done for the flood victims, for the flood affected properties. And I'd like to see it come back to report to council just to make sure that it's on record that we've looked at it and whatever the outcome is, it is.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Right, a reply? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried, unanimous. Page 911.1, the mayoral attendances. I'll move that.
I'll second it, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey. Any questions on my attendances?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Just on the 18th of May, Corocry Preschool reopening celebration, and later in the matters of information, the community financial assistance, Corocry CWA Preschool received $5,000 allocation. That's just more improvements to the preschool.
Yes, I'll comment on my attendance first. Got an invitation to go down to the reopening. It was a really good day. Brought a bit of joy to the lower community of Corocry, and a lot of young children there having fun. They've done an amazing job to get back to where they were and have that reopened. I know there was a lot of parents very happy and to have that opened in their community. Kevin Hogan was also there, and it's a real credit to them how they've come back. And I watched it on Facebook, the rebuild, and yeah, it was a lot of community effort as well as tradesmen and workers that were there. So That's a fantastic outcome for Coraki, and yes, later on I would say that $5,000 will go towards replacing a lot of the toys and infantry that was damaged in that flood because it went a long way under, so yeah.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Any other questions? Put that motion then, all those in favour? Carried. Delegates report, there's one delegate report on page 11 for Rouse Water.
Move that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Humphries, and I'll second it. Any questions? There's two meetings there, the extraordinary meeting, the ordinary meeting that were held. No questions? I'll put that motion then, all those in favour? Carried. Page 16, matters determined without debate. Has any councillors got any items they'd like to call? Councillor Hayes.
15-1, 16-1.
Say again, please.
15-1 and 16-1.
15-1, 16-1. Any other councillors? Councillor, I've got 14.1 and 14.2 and 15.4. Any other calls? All right then, so I need a motion now to adopt 15.2, 15.3, 15.5, 17.1, 17.2, 17.3 and 17.4. Could I get a motion,
Move
please?
that way, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Humphries and seconded Councillor Morrissey. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Councillors, we're now on item page 17, item 14.1. I'll move that. And a seconder, please.
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillors, I'll open up with a question to the General Manager. It's about rate relief. I've had a couple of questions from constituents about do you have to register with Services New South Wales to receive rates relief? As some people who are insured and knew they would not get any money from Services New South Wales, they may not have registered. So I just want to know the ins and outs of how do you qualify to get rate relief if you are flood affected.
Yeah, so we've checked that advice today, and it's you need to be registered with Service New South Wales. So that's the rating relief program that's been announced. It specifies that you need to be registered with Service New South Wales, and there were also SES conducted assessments early in the flood. So where they were identified, that was another trigger to be eligible for the rate relief. So for anyone who feels they should qualify for rate relief, visit Service New South Wales and make sure that you're registered. And then that we're working with Service New South Wales on the arrangements for how that rate relief rebate system will work. We will be issuing rate notices for the next financial year shortly. With that will be a letter that will explain how that system works. So there'll be some communications rolling out, and obviously our customer service team and revenue team will be there to support people who have questions.
Thank you. The other question I've got for you is 14.1 flood recovery update that Mr McFadden spoke on. I did say that we would get a response or a comment. Mr McFadden and I have spoke on this issue on many, many occasions, and I have notified him that there was $7 million in the budget for the coming financial year, is that correct? To do small roadworks between Coraki and Woodburn. So I'd just like to know if this section is a part of that upgrade.
So yes, definitely the section is identified, and we've obviously, as Councillor Hayes mentioned, it's certainly been identified as the weak point. So as part of that $7 million, we will be seeing what it costs to do that. It is a 70-metre section of road, so to raise a road, and you can't just raise the road, it must have, we've already been advised that that road, if it was raised, would need to have significant culverts underneath it. That obviously adds cost to the project. So that's $7 million we've got in the next financial year, which has been provided by the New South Wales Government. The aim of that is to do a number of sections of the Woodburn and Corrocoy Road. We will obviously be doing designs, we'll identify costs, see if we can fit it within that budget. We also may have the opportunity to throw it into the mix for the betterment funding, although I must say there's a lot of ideas and options across the Richmond Valley that we want to have considered as part of that program, and that program will also be competitive with the 6 other councils on the Northern Rivers. So it's definitely on the agenda. We'd like to get it done, and we'll certainly do our best to raise it so that those issues can be addressed.
Thank you. And on page 17, councillors, the second paragraph, it talks about highlights the advocacy and submissions that council has made, and I must say that some of those requests have been listened to by the government. I also appeared at the Legislative Council Select Committee on the response to major flooding across New South Wales in 2022. That inquiry was from the Upper House, was held in Lismore. And I mainly spoke on the issues raised in our council submission to the New South Wales Government of the inquiry. So I went along that lines. I thought we'll just give a consistent message out there. It was an experience. It was different than I thought it would be. But hopefully some outcomes come out of those inquiries, both the private one and the Upper House one, for the betterment of our community. And there are lessons learned from what we've been through in the last few months. So, any other speakers? Councillor Hayes?
Can we get some commentary around the temporary housing with respect to the caravan take-up in Woodburn, the possibilities of what's going to happen in Broadwater, and has there been any feedback on the site location in Evans Head for the temporary village and probably the one in Corrocoy? Have we had any feedback from the community on those items?
Mr General Manager.
Thanks, Councillor Hayes. I might take those in reverse order. So the temporary housing sites, the Park Street site at Evans Head, yes, there has been some feedback. Some people have some concerns with putting that there, so there has been feedback. It's moving forward. Obviously the state government process has been to identify sites that are Crown land, and that was obviously, well, is Crown land. So they've pushed ahead with that. It wasn't a site that we identified. When we originally identified sites back on about the 5th of March, there was about half a dozen sites across the Richmond Valley that we identified, because at that point in time we knew that this would be needed given the scale of what occurred. It has been frustrating that here we are, and I think there's a few caravans roll out. I'm not sure whether Director Jones is able to put a number on it.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not quite sure on a number, but I understand there are at least 3 caravans that have been positioned in Woodburn, and many more applications have moved through from resilience through to Camplify, and they're triaging those, and I understand that caravans are on their way, so I'm presuming you'll see a lot more happening in Woodburn. They're also looking at a case-by-case basis for people in need, and in those rural areas around Woodburn and Corrocoy also. So that program is up and running, and we might be able to give you an update in the next couple of days with the exact numbers that have been through that system. But there is a significant interest, and a lot of people are presenting to participate in this program.
There's obviously some in place because the Minister is visiting later this week and I only heard this morning, to Woodburn specifically for that initiative. So I think my guess will be that the Minister will visit one of these properties where the caravan's in place. Yeah, we'd need to get back to you on the numbers. As far as Broadwater options go, we're encouraging people to register at the community hub at Woodburn. Their interest in the caravan option. That hadn't been the feedback that we'd been getting from the Broadwater community, but we did know that once it became an option for Woodburn, it obviously was pretty obvious that those who are in that situation would want to express interest. So we'd encourage them to visit that hub. You need to visit that hub in person to register for the caravan option. Same would apply for anyone in Coraki who may feel that that's the best solution for them. So visit that hub, chat with the Resilience New South Wales team there. The Coraki site, the planning for that is all but complete. I think there is some site fencing in place. So that's on the old Coraki Hospital site. It is a site that we identified as a good option. So our job has been to work with Resilience New South Wales and Department of Planning to work through the sites and the establishment of those. So it is good that there's 3 options there for our community. We have had questions about caravans for casino, and again the answer there at this stage is to visit the hub in Woodburn. It's been made clear by Resilience New South Wales the Woodburn option is a pilot. It was specifically done for Woodburn because there wasn't a site in Woodburn that was suitable, mainly because it's not flood free. So that's the options there as far as Coraki, Woodburn and Broadwater. So what was your second question there, Councillor Hayes? That was the 3, was it? All right.
Just another question on that. Irrespective of local government boundaries, the people in North Woodburn can go across the hub and apply for a caravan. They don't have to go Lismore way?
Anyone, my understanding is anyone who wants to apply for the caravan option, it's to go to the Woodburn hub. That's what we've been advised. So I don't encourage them to wander across the river and register. I think it does vary, I must say, as to whether it's a government agency. I think Lismore Council wasn't aware as much that caravan option for Woodburn. But we've actually got people on the Woodburn Advisory Group who actually live on the other side of the river, because I think at the end of the day, and I'm sure you're aware, Woodburn's Woodburn, and it includes people on the other side of the river, really. That's their community of interest. And there has been suggestions about, I know boundary adjustments got mentioned earlier tonight. I'd probably be more amenable to this one than the taking on Oakland Road.
I think that North Woodburn would be included. It's got that word Woodburn in it, and it is a community that they gel together. So there was no indication when we spoke that night that North Woodburn would be not allowed to apply. So I would think they would be included.
May I ask a question? When will the pods at Coraki actually be up and running?
General Manager? Director Jones?
I don't have an answer on that. I was just wondering whether Angela did. I'm suggesting maybe not a specific time frame.
Not a specific time frame, but it will take up to 8 weeks to establish that site. So they are building roads, doing concrete pads, landscaping, and bringing those structures in, water, sewer, etc. So depending on the availability of contractors, but we're looking at a couple of months.
The other issue they have is building the pods themselves. So they're literally being built and they're rolling them out. They've got the site at Wollongbar. There are sites in the Tweed. They're working on a site in the Byron area. So there's potentially around half a dozen of these, pod villages, and they're actually needing to build the pods. So as they build them, they'll roll them onto the different sites.
Just one more thing while we're on there. Deborah Johnson's still in the room. I just note there that in the flood inquiry submission we put in that we've asked them to review the flood impacts on the Pacific Motorway and make their findings public. So we're advocating for that, so she knows. She probably read it.
Did you ask a question about the pods in Evans Head? Did you? No?
I asked about the site in Evans Head.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and he answered that, yep.
just comment on, obviously we're talking about Woodburn, and it's obviously related to the flood report, just around the rollout of grants. Obviously, as you know, and some of you have been able to get to the advisory group meetings, there's a high level of frustration in the community, particularly from businesses, about getting any funding rolling. I did hear today, and today the government has rolled out the next program of funding, which is the 50 million for large businesses, of which it appears 6 million has already been used. And I think that was to support Norco and the impacts on employees and infrastructure there. So there's 44.3 million still available under that program, but that's for large businesses, it's up around the 200 plus staff. So I think there may be one candidate in our area, being Sunshine Sugar and the cane industry, for that program. But it also I checked in with a couple of the Woodburn businesses, and they're on our advisory group as well, to see whether any of the funding had flowed from the previous program that was released, which was the $200,000 program. And unfortunately, the answers weren't positive. So money to businesses, particularly in Woodburn, but also the medium-sized business in Coraki hasn't been delivered as yet. And I know that Resilience New South Wales put advanced teams in, and teams to work directly, concierges and the like, to try and get this money rolling out. And I think in some cases that has been successful, but probably for these key businesses. So, in the context of Woodburn, for example, Sly Brothers is as important to Woodburn as Norco is to Lismore, when you look at it relatively. And I spoke to David this afternoon, and his level of frustration is very high. He's been pushing to get this medium-sized business grant, and the Mayor and I were there when the Premier visited, the Deputy Premier visited. It was just after the Prime Minister had been here, and there was talk of bespoke programs for businesses like them in villages like Woodburn. But at the moment, no money is available. They just have spent so much time in sort of red tape and trying to meet design requirements and criteria for these guidelines. And at the end of the day, as David sort of mentioned today, the focus is on the number of employees and needing to be 20 and above. He says it should really be based around loss. What have you actually lost? So a business that has 30 employees and lost 500,000, they'll get the 200,000 support to get going again. Whereas a business like his that's lost 3.5 million, as he's put it, receives bugger all, potentially 50 grand. And it's not only a business that's important for Woodburn, it's actually a business that's important for the reconstruction of the Northern Rivers. As you know, it's a business that we identified as a case study in our flood report that we put out on about the 5th of April. Unfortunately, all that advocacy, the visits of politicians, and our efforts to get some support for those sorts of businesses at this point in time has fallen. It probably hasn't fallen on deaf ears, but it certainly hasn't led to any decisions that will help them get going again. I've got to say, I'm pretty amazed some of those businesses, what they're doing to get their businesses going. They are investing and getting going, but they're getting going slower than what they would otherwise. They're doing their best to keep their employees. So I think it's just a follow-on from some of the conversations we've had, with particularly the Woodburn situation. It's a good example, but it is happening in many places across the Northern Rivers.
Follow-up question?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. Look, I was at that meeting in Woodburn in Sly Brothers Shed that day when Mr Dominic Perrottet turned up and promised us the world, and we've seen nothing. Everyone you talk to has had not any success with any of those possible grants. And the criteria just seems to outweigh or get above what people are actually on the ground trying to do. I know for a fact Sly Brothers are working in conjunction with all the builders at have served them over the years in borrowing trucks and cranes just to operate, to supply the product that they need to keep operating. And the help from the community and the other businesses is a lot greater than what it has been from the government, and I think what it's going to be. I've got no confidence whatsoever that we're going to get anything anywhere. Few caravans, fixed house, see you later. And I've got the same confidence in the insurance companies. They're just going to walk away. Nothing's happening. If you drive around Woodburn, and I haven't taken the time to go to Broadwater or Coraki, the houses that are getting fixed are the ones that aren't insured, where the people are just out having a go. They're the ones we need to help.
Any other speakers?
No.
Councillor Deegan.
Yeah, first of all, probably just want to acknowledge that the work and the advocacy from the Mayor, the General Manager and the Council staff. I think the Council's really been on the front foot as soon as possible after the initial emergency, so really want to acknowledge the efforts of everyone involved in that. Just a couple of questions, a couple of follow-up questions to start with. So, yeah, Mr Mayor, you mentioned around registering through Service New South Wales for the rate relief. Do we know if there's a cut-off date for people to do that?
I don't know, but I would encourage people as soon as, I don't think there's been one notified, from what I understand, but...
yeah, I guess just the concern that people may not be aware of it till they get their rates notice with the letter.
They need to do it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So they can, and that's why I raised it tonight, so we can get some information out there, because there will be people, oh, I'm insured, I'm not going to get anything, but then they don't get the rate, so they need to register.
Yeah. Yeah, just a follow-up question in relation to the caravans. It's probably been answered, but I guess just in terms of people on like rural or farm communities around the eligibility.
I just encourage them to register,
Yeah.
and the reason that they're doing it in person is so that the staff there can get an understanding of the circumstances for every case. You know, as we know, many cases are very different, and obviously the government did announce this as a pilot for Woodburn, but it's on the basis that if it's successful, they would look to expand it, and obviously rural properties provide a good option, you know, so that you can actually live back on your property while you fix it and get it going again. So, I mean, from our position, it's just make the visit to the community hub at Woodburn, tell your story, get registered, and push hard. Part of this is pushing your case. That's what we're doing. We're trying to advocate hard for our community. Individuals need to do that as well.
Thank you for that. Riverbank Red Restoration, it's clear that there's been significant damage and there's a lot of work to be done. I guess the most visible part of that, particularly around Casino, is the damage to that road that goes down underneath the bridge and the car park. I understand that's not a council asset. And is there any update on what's happening with that? And do we know if there's options, as they say, to build back better in terms of design and so forth around that?
General Manager.
Pleased you asked that question, because at this stage there isn't further specific funding for Riverbank Restoration. There's also the issue of those properties that are on the riverbank, and obviously those videos that we've done that have been on Facebook over the last week or two have been done because we've talked about this issue and the need to advocate for something, both to provide options around either house raising or house moving, but also how do we fix the riverbank? You know, in some cases, you know, you can't, but obviously where there's a close proximity to property, we need to look at some options. You know, what happens the next time we get a bit of water flow through there? As far as Halstead's Drive, at this stage, you're right. It's Crown land. The river's actually Crown land, so it's their responsibility. Look, we'll work with them and do an assessment of whether it's needed, whether it can be rebuilt, what that would cost, So, you know, there are many situations like this right across the Northern Rivers, you know, with that sort of damage, landslips. It's extensive. So it'll be in the mix, and we'll do our best to get as many good outcomes as we can.
Yeah, and just one final question, just in terms of the recommendations to the flood inquiry around improving flood warning systems. Ms Johnson mentioned tonight gauges on Bungawalbin Creek and so forth. Is there any update in relation to that situation, or whether additional gauges might be installed on that creek or in other areas?
Oh, there's nothing really to update. I was interested in Ms Johnson's comment about the advice that she got that councils are responsible. I don't know whether you've got any comment on that, Angela?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The issue of gauges is an interesting one. Manly Hydraulics do install and monitor a number of gauges, and I know Clarence Valley Council did a program many moons ago that Manly Hydraulics were involved in. However, most of the gauges are the responsibility of the BOM as the organisation. So we are looking at all options, and whether we work with state government agencies like the BOM and do some sort of program. It's widely acknowledged that the Bungawalbin catchment has got limited gauges, and that there's a lot of black spots in that area, and given it's the second largest catchment in the Northern Rivers area, and we need to look at doing something better there. So looking at every opportunity, but in my opinion, it's not specifically council, local government's issue to resolve. It's a collective issue, and we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Any other speakers? No, just in closing then, I will follow up on that question from Councillor Deegan about the Riverbank. I've had, like some other councillors, have been had some inquiries from residents and ratepayers who live on the river, and a lot of their houses are being threatened by the bank erosion. One I went and had a look at, he just said, "How are you going to fix it?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I would not know if it could be engineered fixed. As we know, from the top end of Casino right through, the bank is devastated. And I don't know how you would fix some of those. But this person's house is, I suppose, 2 to 3 metres from a straight sheer drop. It'd have to be 30 metres, and it's straight down. It's not, like that." And I said to him, "Now, look, realistically, let's hope there's buyback options and the government will purchase your block of land. But as of yet, there's been none of that. It's like the house raising. It's just been silent." So, but yeah, there's a lot of people out there stressed. They're too scared to go back to their houses, what might happen. And this gentleman was actually very emotional. And I felt very sorry for him. So there's a lot of work ahead of us. And we need support from the government, and sometimes they come through and they've promised so much money, but it's just not getting in and out to the people in our community that really need it. And some of the hoops and you've got to jump through, it's very frustrating for people who have endured this ordeal. That'll close the debate. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. 14.2, I'll move that. I'll call it. Seconder?
Second.
Councillor Cornish. Councillors, this is just a quick one just to mention that with the strategic plan, we had started after the election. As you know, it has to be done. Community strategic plan needs to be done by this meeting, and within the first 6 months of the election. So the election was in December. That would have been adopted tonight. We had started the process of community consultation for that strategic plan, and then in February the floods came. We'd actually had one consultation night in Casino, and we'd also done phone surveys plus other avenues. But the flood got in the road, so I'll just might ask the General Manager to, as you can see, we have to do one now, an updated one by June 2023. So I'll ask the General Manager just not exactly what is proposed, but the guidelines that we have to go to and what we could see happening in the lower river.
Well, obviously we'd commenced our consultation on the community strategic plan. We're actually in the midst of that when we're hit by floods, so we needed to basically pause that. So we'll be looking to pick up that conversation. I think our target is around from about September. We'll be doing that in a number of ways. And we are having ongoing conversations now. We've got 5 advisory groups. So in some sense, we're probably getting more feedback at the moment than we do when we just would have gone out traditionally and asked people for feedback. So we've got those 5 groups happening, meeting sort of at least sort of fortnightly, at least monthly. So we'll use those, but we'll be preparing. Obviously, we'll need to adjust given the focus on recovery, and this recovery, as we all know, is going to take at least 3 years to fix everything. So yeah, that's the process that we'll be taking. We're also in the process of finalising our regional job precinct work. So that also includes a casino place plan. So that's future plans for casino. It obviously relates around industrial growth and more jobs, which is what that New South Wales government designation of casino as aims to achieve. So that will be coming out likely August, September, so there'll be consultation on those plans. We've also got our urban growth management strategy linked to that. So that's, what's the future residential options across the Richmond Valley. So that'll, again, there'll be further consultation on that. So there will be in the sort of later, probably the last, 3 or 4 months of this calendar year, quite a bit of consultation that we will need to manage. So all of that will also feed through into what is our next community strategic plan, which we need to have in place by 30 June next year. So I think there'll be plenty of opportunity for our community to have a say. Our challenge is going to be balancing getting the recovery done, but also getting on with some of those projects that the community like to see happening, like the current projects with the showground, upgrading the swimming pool, the drill hall site, and those other sort of signature projects that we've delivered, similar to, we talked about the NRLX earlier tonight, things that we've delivered over the last 5 years. We need to keep delivering those sorts of key projects where the funding from our governments is available.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillors, I'll just, on that over the page, it's consultation. Had 20 days out there of consultation, and there was no public submissions were received, so I'll take that as a very positive response, not negative. I think when the people read that document that we had produced, that they were, from all the feedback I got from our community, they were pretty impressed, as were a lot of government departments and also politicians. There wasn't any other council around that had really put documents out that so early for the betterment of our community, so we can tell them where we're going. And I look forward to, over the coming year, implementing that, rebuilding the Richmond Valley recovery plan along with our community. It's going to take a joint effort by everyone in our community to get on with the job, and it's going to take a while, and it's going to be a lot of trying times ahead of us to get back to where we were. But we'll be back, and it will be stronger than ever. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? 15.1, Councillor Hayes.
Thank you. I'd like to alter the dot point 1 in the recommendation and add to it, and take 2, 3 and 4 as they're written. I'd like to alter 1 to read, Council adopts the draft operational plan 2022-2023, including financial estimates 2022 to 2026 Revenue Policy 2022 to 2023 and Long-Term Financial Plan 2022 to 2032, which are subject to that report, and the advertised NRLX fee structure be maintained to ensure the community continues to receive a return on its investment in the NRLX upgrade.
Is that,
That's it?
that's it?
Yep.
Thank you, Mrs Clark. Could I have a seconder for that, please?
Second.
Councillor Humphries?
Thank you.
Councillor Hayes?
Okay, look, I've got a document here, I just want to read it out. So, when I was first elected on council in 2012, the casino sale yards, as they were known then, were a topic of debate. I was astonished to be informed at the time how this facility, supplied by the Richmond Valley Council ratepayers, was being utilised by the users at the time. The figures showed a deficit, and by memory the agent's usage fee was fixed and their business licence fee had not increased for a long period of time. A large proportion of the fees attributed to this facility that are now included in our revenue policy did not exist. A comment at the time was that the agent's tenure was based around the history of the way the sale yards had been used in the past. A presentation on proposed fee structures of the past indicated a long history of proposed agreements not advancing or being able to be agreed on to keep pace with the economy of the time. The Richmond Valley Council from this time to the present has put in place a financial plan and management system that has allowed for steady increases, as well as putting the complex in a financial position to be able to carry out the recent upgrades. Council's revenue policies over this time have increased across all income streams, which has led Council to be in a financial position it is in today. The facility needs to continue to be run as a business, a venture into the future, so that we have the ability, when it is required to attract other selling agents and related businesses to take up tenure at the facility. We need to build on and consolidate a range of fees and charges that are adequate for the vendors and the agents and for the proper ongoing management of this community asset by the Richmond Valley Council on behalf of their ratepayers, and to attract new business to support our diverse local economy. Back in 2012, I was of the opinion that the only way forward, if the facility could not be run at least break even, was to sell the complex. I recall moving a notice of motion reflecting this. I did not agree that Council's role was to provide a facility for cattle industry and not for other agricultural industries located in the Richmond River Valley, in the Richmond River area, Council area. The letter in today's business paper from the Casino Auctioneers Association indicates to me that they were only concerned with protecting their exclusive historical use of the complex. And to conclude, as this complex is now promoted as a regional facility, the sooner we progress to a percentage of the turnover as a usage fee, the better off the broader community of the Northern Rivers will be. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Humphries.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Making a comment on the whole report, Council received one submission which is a good indication that Council can get on with the job with a good deal of confidence. Around the NRLX, I think it's a good area to have a submission in. The NRLX is an important and integral business within our community and our region. And as with all businesses, we can go forward with discussions, we can make good decisions around a business because we have the financials to back up the decision-making process. I do have a question. I have a couple more comments to make, but I do have a question to the General Manager through you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to ask, Mr Lyle made a comment that if they were to need to pay more money for the running of their business, for their sale days, they wouldn't be able to make their donations to the community. What I would like to know is, what is the cost to council? What do council staff have to do on those days? What's the big picture there, please?
Mr General Manager.
So, all breed sale. So it's on a Saturday. So obviously our staff don't normally work on a Saturday, so we have an additional day, so we've got staff costs. We've also got the preparation of the facility and what goes into that. The estimate for the last, so the 2021 sale, was that the costs for that were $7,800. Obviously some of those costs does leave a legacy obviously we replenish the soft floor. So that so obviously the team work it so that where they can, that the soft floor is ready to be replaced at that point in time. So there's fresh soft floor put in. So that's so we actually have a separate budget for the all breed sale because it's traditionally an event every year that is held at the yards. So that's the cost structure for last year's all breed sale. So does that answer your question?
And certainly council does take into consideration, as Bruce was saying, there is definitely in-kind advantage for council supporting these sales as well. That's got to be recognised.
Yeah, so there's in-kind benefits. The figures I've got from last year's sale was that the revenue to council from the fees associated with it was $5,023. The vendor's return was $1,041,829, and based on an average of 5% commission, the agent's return was $55,097. So of the gross revenue proceeds, that's sort of the breakdown. There's obviously a range of other costs involved for the different parties, but just based on gross revenue, that's how it gets apportioned.
So just a quick follow-up question. Council actually runs that at a loss of around $2,500.
Based on those figures, yes. Obviously, there's that factor that I mentioned around, there is a legacy of your operational maintenance costs of your soft floor, right. but on pure figures, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, while we were on that subject, I just wanted to get that clarified.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
perfectly fine. As I said when I was opening, like when you're running a business, you've always got those figures, the revenue and the expenditure to come back to. And I was looking at the example of the 0.3%. And what I've got here, and I could be a little bit wobbly on them, but for a beast for $8,000, the agents currently, they receive their 5%, which is $400, and council gets the $2.20, which is 0.000275%. Richmond Valley Council's recommendation, the agents still receive their 5%, which is the $400. The 0.3 would be $24. And I accept Andrew's comment, all businesses need to be sustainable, most definitely. But from that media release, that recent media release, it reads, following Wednesday's sale, the 15th of June, the current revenue from sales from this financial year stood at $200 million, a staggering $57 million increase from $143 million 2021, with more sales to go. So I don't yet understand how the agents can't absorb that 0.3, and it needs to be passed on down to the vendors. So at this point in time, in the interest of sustainability for the NRLX and to ensure that the facility remains an elite facility, I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Any other speakers? No? Oh, look, I've just got one comment, or a couple of have a question. Mr. Somerville said that the charges were not consulted on with council. I'd just like to get a comment on that, but I will comment that it's been advertised for 28 days out there, that any community member and any association could have a look at that over the 28 days. And I know that we, as you mentioned earlier, Councillor Humphries, we had were looking forward to and had planned for Mr. Somerville to come and address council. I would have liked that to have occurred. But Mr. General Manager, could you just let me know if there was any consultation or offers of consultation in the past, please? Or bringing them, making them aware of these fees?
Yep. Just give me a second. Yes, I've checked, obviously with our sale yards manager, Brad Willis, and he's forwarded a letter that was actually issued to the President of the Aged Association on the 5th of May, which sets out the proposed fee schedule. Subsequent to that, I know that Brad's attended meetings. We've either had meetings or offered meetings, and they haven't panned out. So, I don't agree and won't accept that we haven't consulted on it. But also, we have now consulted, as we're required to under the Local Government Act, by putting these our revenue policy and budget, etc., out for public submission, which obviously the association took the opportunity to respond to that. So I think we've consulted and advised them of this proposal with plenty of time for their consideration and to have discussions. And obviously they're here tonight, so they've had the opportunity to make their views known.
Any other speakers? Councillor, there's been a lot of time in this debate focusing on the sale yards, but this item is a lot bigger than that. This is about our community and our draft operational plan for 2022-23, a draft financial estimates for 2022-26, and the draft revenue policy and draft long-term financial plan for 2022-2032. So this is our future, this document. As Councillor Humphries mentioned, there was only one submission relating to the sale yards, but I'd just like to bring your attention to page 25. We're looking at running a $257,000 surplus over the whole operation. That's unrestricted cash surplus. When you look at the third line down of that graph, it will be a $1.849 million deficit of operating result before capital grants and contributions. This council needs to keep pursuing and being very consistent in our finances for our future. We all know the Office of Local Government have key performance indicators that we're required to or be looked at, we are achieving. They monitor us, and if you look at that line, you will see over the next 4 years we are heading in the right direction. We go from that 1.849 to a projected in 2025 to 2026 $125,000 loss. We are responsible for ratepayers' money, and we have to keep going that way. And I believe this council has been, over the last few years, and previous councils before the last council, taking our finance into consideration. And the community expects us to do that, and we need to do it and get on with it. And I think that's why we have not had any submissions, because our community respects what we do, and we get on with the job. And I think at the last election, that was proven, where a large majority of the councils were returned. And we will, this council, I think, will get on with that, and I can see a good future. And once again, I'll say, working with our community, we ought to get on board. We've been through a lot over the last 5 or 6 years with floods and fires and droughts and the COVID. So we'll get over it, and we'll come out at the other end a lot stronger and better off, and very strong finances. Councillor Hayes, unless anyone else would like to speak.
I think I've said it all.
You'll be closing when you speak.
Yeah, no, I think I've said it all. I don't need to close.
Put that motion then. All those in favour? That's unanimous. I believe our next item is 15.4 on page 32. Councillors, I'll move that. And a seconder, please.
Second.
Morrissey. Councillors, I think this is very important if we're going to double the General Manager's responsibility for going to tender, that this be a decision and debated in the council, or noted in the council, not just adopted previously. So it's not much to say. This occurred in the 2019-20 bushfires. It's only for, it could be only used for flood-related recovery works, and I think it's for 12 months. Is that correct, Mr. General Manager?
Yeah, it's for 12 months from the date of the declaration.
So, any other speakers? I just think it needed to be noted publicly. I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. 16.1, Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, I want to move the recommendation as written. I've just got a question. And
I'll second.
thank you. It comes around the Broadwater Evans Head Road. I was on the understanding that the road has been dedicated as a regional road, and I'm just wondering if the General Manager can let us know what that does to this proposal about the two roundabouts and the interchange and the ongoing maintenance costs involved with council. The costs and, you know, how our involvement changes that road if it's a regional road, is changed within a regional road situation.
Mr. General Manager.
Thanks, Councillor Hayes. Given your previous questions on this one, I thought we might get this question, so I actually got Director Jones to check on that one this afternoon, so I'll let her answer the question.
Director Jones.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So at the time of writing this report, we hadn't had the correspondence that we've now received. So the Broadwater Evans Head Road has been classified as a regional road, so it's been accepted. We are still debating whether, Council does not want to take on the responsibility of those roundabouts as per point 2. So we're still in the process of sorting that out. That has not been resolved, but Broadwater Evans Head Road is now a regional road.
I thought it'd be cut and dried. If it's a regional road and there's roundabouts on that road, we get maintenance money for them. It's got to be that simple, surely.
You would think so, but unfortunately not. So our point is that those roundabouts are a function of the motorway. If the motorway wasn't there and it was just an overpass and it was a regional road that just went, over the motorway, that's fine. It would be a regional road. We'd accept that. But those roundabouts are critical to the functioning of that motorway, and therefore we believe should be part of the motorway and the responsibility of Transport for New South Wales, and we do not want that responsibility.
Probably just the other point, just because it becomes a regional road, it doesn't mean it comes with a pot of money. Our regional road network, which I think we've got about 65 kilometres of road, roughly, I think our allocation from the state government at the moment is around last time I checked, it was about $850,000 to $900,000. So you can imagine with those kilometres, it doesn't go too far.
Wanted that cleared up. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Mr. General Manager, Barang, the old Pacific Highway that runs through Broadwater. It's not mentioned, is it not in this mix?
That's my understanding. I'll just check with Director Jones. She was going to check that one out.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, Barang Drive is another sticking point that we have. The state wanted to make that a local road. We believe it should be a regional road. Given that it is one of the alternate routes should an accident or something happen on the motorway, it is also still classified as a B-double route. So we have written to Transport for New South Wales about that road also, and we are advocating it to be a regional road.
It makes it very hard when we struggle for income, and then all of a sudden a highway goes past and the local, it's not only us, but other local councils are required to take the full load of the maintenance. And as we know, every council struggles with their roads, and this just makes a lot more jobs for us, and it spreads our funding wider. So everything that the staff are doing to try to defer or stop council having to take the responsibility, I support 100%. Any other speakers? Councillor Hayes, right a reply.
Would they get
Put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Page 48, item 19, matters for information. Could I get a mover, please?
Move, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey.
Second.
Councillor Humphreys. Any councillors have any items?
Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor. 19.3, the cost of the election.
Yes.
Pretty good result, isn't it?
Page 52. Yeah, well, it's good to see things coming in under budget. Yep.
Just a comment, sorry.
Any other questions? Quick comments? I'll just, most probably a question to you, but you might want to pass on to Mr Zeller about the showground upgrade. I noticed there's Councillor Morris and I went out to Whipparee the other day, and there's a big roof getting constructed there. You might give us an update on that, please.
Yeah, sure. No, we're quite excited about that project at the moment because we've finally had some pretty good weather in the last couple of months, so it's good to see some progress there. To this point, we've sort of concentrated on the surrounding sand training track. I actually went out and had a drive on that the other day, so it's coming along very well. The other point to mention there is that the design continues to happen with all the new equestrian centres and day stalls and things like that. So it's good to see that work's underway. Just probably another thing that the councillors and the public may be interested in. Two of our field staff went on a quick dash to Scone yesterday to have a look at their centre down there, and it's one that we think we can replicate. They had a really good discussion on how the council runs that and how they actually get it to fund itself going forward, which is a bit topical with similar to the previous item on the NRLX. We've got to get these assets to pay for themselves. So that was an interesting trip, and we took a fair bit of it out of that. So as far as progress goes on the build, we've got the funding agreement needing that to be done by 30 June 2023. So that'll be hard work to get to that point, but something that we're determined to deliver. So.
How big is the building at Scone, the centre?
I think it's of a similar scale as the one that we're proposing. They actually were very forthcoming on the type of services that they prefer and what sort of events that will attract. So I think there's some lessons in that for us in let's follow how someone else has done it successfully and try and learn from any mistakes and have a good facility for our community.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
Is there a racetrack involved at Scone Complex?
No racetrack at Scone.
I think they're separate, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyone else? Councillor Morris, you want to write a reply?
No, yes, Mr Mayor.
Put that motion then. All those in favour? Item 20 on page 79. No questions on notice. Do we have any questions for the next meeting in writing? No questions. We'll move over. Now go to matters for closed council. Need a recommendation to go in closed council, please. Councillor Morrissey. Seconder, Councillor Cornish. Mr. General Manager. Thank you, Gary. Safe trip home. Mr. General Manager, has been any written representation made regarding the meeting going into closed council?
No, none received.
Are there any verbal representations from no one? I'll put that motion and all those in favour. Carried. Mr General Manager, could someone read, please, the resolutions of closed council, please?
Yeah, Director Zeller can do that. It's his report.
Director Zeller.
In the item 22.1, transport and disposal of mixed waste contract, recommendation that council notes the outcomes of the direct negotiation for the transport and disposal of mixed waste contract, which has been awarded to a consortium of Richmond Waste and Solo for a first year value in the order of $2,150,000, with it being a 3 by 1 year contract at council's discretion.
Thank you. I'll now close the meeting and wish everyone a safe trip home. And thank you for your attendance.